Good morning. Thank you for joining me today. This morning we'll be in Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 1, through chapter 32, verse 27. Then Moses went and spoke these words to all Israel. He said to them, "Today I am 120 years old. I am no longer able to get about, and the Lord has said to me, 'You will not cross the Jordan.' As for the Lord your God, he is about to cross over before you. He will destroy these nations before you and dispossess them. As for Joshua, he is about to cross before you just as the Lord has said. The Lord will do to them just what he did to Sihon and Og, the Amorite kings, and to their land which he destroyed. The Lord will deliver them over to you, and you will do to them according to the whole commandment I have given you. Be strong and courageous. Do not fear or tremble before them, for the Lord your God is the one who is going with you. He will not fail you or abandon you." Then Moses called out to Joshua in the presence of all Israel, "Be strong and courageous, for you will accompany these people to the land that the Lord promised to give their ancestors, and you will enable them to inherit it. The Lord is indeed going before you. He will be with you. He will not fail you or abandon you. Do not be afraid or discouraged." Then Moses wrote down this law and gave it to the Levitical priests, who carried the ark of the Lord's covenant, and to all Israel's elders. He commanded them, "At the end of 7 years, at the appointed time of the cancellation of debts, at the feast of temporary shelters, when all Israel comes to appear before the Lord your God in the place he chooses, you must read this law before them within their hearing. Gather the people, men, women, and children, as well as the resident foreigners in your villages, so they may hear and thus learn about and fear the Lord your God, and carefully obey all the words of this law. Then their children, who have not known this law, will also hear about and learn to fear the Lord your God, for as long as you live in the land you are crossing the Jordan to possess." Then the Lord said to Moses, "The day of your death is near. Summon Joshua and present yourselves in the tent of meeting so that I can commission him." So Moses and Joshua presented themselves in the tent of meeting. The Lord appeared in the tent in a pillar of cloud that stood above the door of the tent. Then the Lord said to Moses, "You are about to die, and then these people will begin to prostitute themselves with the foreign gods of the land into which they are going. They will reject me and break my covenant that I have made with them. At that time my anger will erupt against them, and I will abandon them and hide my face from them until they are devoured. Many disasters and distresses will overcome them, so that they will say at that time, 'Have not these disasters overcome us because our God is not among us?' But I will certainly hide myself at that time, because of all the wickedness they will have done by turning to other gods. Now write down for yourselves the following song, and teach it to the Israelites. Put it into their very mouths, so that this song may serve as my witness against the Israelites. For after I have brought them to the land I promised to their ancestors, one flowing with milk and honey, and they eat their fill and become fat, then they will turn to other gods and worship them. They will reject me and break my covenant. Then when many disasters and distresses overcome them, this song will testify against them, for their descendants will not forget it. I know the intentions they have in mind today, even before I bring them to the land I have promised." So on that day Moses wrote down this song and taught it to the Israelites. And the Lord commissioned Joshua, son of Nun, "Be strong and courageous, for you will take the Israelites to the land I have promised them, and I will be with you." When Moses finished writing on a scroll the words of this law in their entirety, he commanded the Levites, who carried the ark of the Lord's covenant, "Take this scroll of the law and place it beside the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God. It will remain there as a witness against you. For I know about your rebellion and stubbornness. Indeed, even while I have been living among you, to this very day you have rebelled against the Lord. You will be even more rebellious after my death. Gather to me all your tribal elders and officials, so I can speak to them directly about these things, and call the heavens and the earth to witness against them. For I know that after I die, you will totally corrupt yourselves and turn away from the path I have commanded you to walk. Disaster will confront you in the days to come, because you will act wickedly before the Lord, inciting him to anger because of your actions." Then Moses recited the words of this song from start to finish in the hearing of the whole assembly of Israel. "Listen, O heavens, and I will speak. Hear, O earth, the words of my mouth. My teaching will drop like the rain, my sayings will drip like the dew, as rain drops upon the grass and showers upon new growth. For I will proclaim the name of the Lord. You must acknowledge the greatness of our God. As for the rock, his work is perfect, for all his ways are just. He is a reliable God who is never unjust. He is fair and upright. His people have been unfaithful to him. They have not acted like his children. This is their sin. They are a perverse and deceitful generation. Is this how you repay the Lord, you foolish, unwise people? Is he not your Father, your Creator? He has made you and established you. Remember the ancient days. Bear in mind the years of past generations. Ask your father, and he will inform you, your elders, and they will tell you. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided up humankind, he set the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of the heavenly assembly. For the Lord's allotment is his people. Jacob is his special possession. The Lord found him in a desolate land, in an empty wasteland where animals howl. He continually guarded him and taught him. He continually protected him like the pupil of his eye. Like an eagle that stirs up its nest, that hovers over its young, so the Lord spread out his wings and took him. He lifted him up on his pinions. The Lord alone was guiding him. No foreign god was with him. He enabled him to travel over the high terrain of the land, and he ate of the produce of the fields. He provided honey for him from the cliffs, and olive oil from the hardest of rocks. Butter from the herd and milk from the flock, along with the fat of lambs, rams, and goats of Bashan, along with the best of the kernels of wheat, and from the juice of grapes you drank wine. But Jeshurun became fat and kicked. You got fat, thick, and stuffed. Then he deserted the God who made him, and treated the rock who saved him with contempt. They made him jealous with other gods. They enraged him with abhorrent idols. They sacrificed to demons, and not God, to gods they had not known, to new gods who had recently come along, gods your ancestors had not known about. You have forgotten the rock who fathered you, and put out of mind the God who gave you birth. But the Lord took note and despised them, because his sons and daughters enraged him. He said, I will reject them. I will see what happens to them, for they are a perverse generation, children who show no loyalty. They have made me jealous with false gods, enraging me with their worthless gods. So I will make them jealous with a people they do not recognize. With a nation slow to learn, I will enrage them. For a fire has been kindled by my anger, and it burns the lowest Sheol. It consumes the earth and its produce, and ignites the foundations of the mountains. I will increase their disasters. I will use up my arrows on them. They will be starved by famine, eaten by plague, and bitterly stung. I will send the teeth of wild animals against them, along with the poison of creatures that crawl in the dust. The sword will make people childless outside, and terror will do so inside. They will destroy both the young man and the virgin, the infant and the gray-haired man. I said, I want to cut them in pieces. I want to make people forget they ever existed. But I fear the reaction of their enemies, for their adversaries would misunderstand and say, Our power is great, and the Lord has not done all this. Yeah, so Moses on the precipice of the Promised Land speaks to Israel, telling them to obey the laws that the Lord has given them, that God will deliver them from their enemies in the land of Canaan, just as he delivered them from the hands of Sihon and Og, who came out against them. That Joshua will be going out with them to conquer them. Joshua, whose name means Yahweh is salvation. And the Lord will go before them. And the command to observe the Feast of Booths here again. It's interesting how many times the feasts are proclaimed as something that they had to do. Yeah. And then God calls Moses to him and says that you're about to die, and these people are about to forsake me and go to other gods. And Moses, far from being like, what? Not these people. I've known them, and they've been great people, and they would never do that. Moses says, yeah, because while I was still alive here with you, you've been a rebellious and stiff-necked people. How much more so when I'm dead? Yeah. So, Moses teaches them this song that they're supposed to remember and call to mind, and the song itself will be a testimony against them concerning their past and current, concerning their unfaithfulness. And it's interesting. In 32:15, he deserted the God who made him and treated the rock who saved him with contempt. They made him jealous with other gods. They enraged him with abhorrent idols. Yeah, so they're singing about themselves deserting God and forsaking him for demons. They sacrificed to demons, not gods, not God, to gods they had not known, to new gods who had recently come along, gods your ancestors had not known about. As Anthony Rogers likes to put it, the Johnny-come-lately of the gods, who are not gods at all. Yeah. It's also interesting here that I had thought previously that when Paul said that when idols are sacrificed to, that they're sacrificed to demons, I thought that was something just part of the New Testament, but here it is in the Old as well. So, I'm 120 years old today. Moses, at 120 years, was not limited by his physical condition. In a short time, he will climb to the top of a mountain. Instead, he could no longer go out and come in because he was limited by God's command. The decree that Moses would not enter the promised land. Yeah. And God is certainly able to fill us with strength. You shall not cross over this Jordan. These specific words of God to Moses are not recorded in the Numbers 20 account. This must be a further elaboration of the decree. You shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them. There's a difference between you shall not bring this congregation into the land and you shall not cross over this Jordan. By the first statement, it is allowable that Moses could go into the promised land, but not as the leader of the nation, having passed the torch of leadership to Joshua. But God made it even more clear to Moses, you shall not cross over this Jordan. God's correction of Moses was hard. Not only will he not lead Israel into the promised land, he will not even go there. That which he had dreamed of and felt called to as a child in the palaces of Egypt, to deliver God's people, will not be completed. Another will finish the job, and Moses' feet will never touch the soil of the land that God had promised to the covenant descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Why was it such a severe punishment? What did Moses do? Essentially, at Meribah, when Israel complained and cried out for water, Moses misrepresented God. He misrepresented God by lecturing the nation harshly and unnecessarily. Moses misrepresented God by acting as if God needed him to provide water for the people. And Moses both misrepresented and disobeyed God by angrily striking the rock twice, instead of just speaking to the rock as God had told him to. This may seem an excessively harsh punishment for Moses. After all, with only one slip-up, he must die short of the promised land. But Moses was being judged by a stricter standard because of his leadership position within the nation and because he had a uniquely close relationship with God. It is right for teachers and leaders to be judged by a stricter standard. Though it is unrighteous to hold teachers and leaders to a perfect standard, it is true that people's conduct was worse than Moses, but it is irrelevant. Worst of all, Moses defaced a beautiful picture of Jesus' redemptive work through the rock that provided water in the wilderness. The New Testament makes it clear this water-providing, life-giving rock was a picture of Jesus. Jesus, being struck once, provided life for all who would drink of him. But it was unnecessary and unrighteous that Jesus would be struck again, much less again twice, because the Son of God needed only to suffer once. Jesus can now be come to with words of faith. As Moses should have only used words of faith to bring life-giving water to the nation of Israel, Moses ruined this picture of the work of Jesus God intended. The Lord your God himself crosses over before you. Moses had led Israel for 40 years. He was the only leader most of these people had ever known. Yet the nation could be confident, and Moses could go his way in peace, because he knew God was with Israel. Israel, Moses, or Joshua did not have to be afraid. Instead, they could be strong and of good courage, because the Lord your God, he is the one who goes with you. Moses was a great man, one of the greatest to ever walk this earth. But Moses was not irreplaceable. God being with them, Israel was in good hands, with or without Moses. Be strong and of good courage. Since God was going to use Joshua, he must be strong and of good courage. But Moses knew Joshua and knew that he would. So he confidently said, "You shall cause them to inherit it." Men of encouragement like Moses are a blessing. Moses knew that Joshua might be wavering, so he encouraged him and pushed him forward to be more than he perhaps thought he could be. God uses encouraging people to help us fulfill the destiny he has for us. Moses wrote the law, and you shall read this law before all Israel in their hearing. Part of the job of the Levites was to minister the word of God to the nation, as they were scattered throughout the nation. Every 7 years they were to have a public reading and explanation of the law of God, as was modeled in Nehemiah 8, chapter 8, verses 1 through 8. The first we know of a public reading of the law is in Joshua 8:30. The next we hear of it is during the reign of Jehoshaphat. More than 500 years later, then in the reign of Josiah, there was another public reading of the law. More than 250 years after Jehoshaphat. Of course, there might have been public readings of the law as commanded here, which are not recorded, but the fact that some are recorded probably means they were unusual, not typical. With this kind of neglect of God's word, no wonder Israel was so often in trouble. Yeah. This people will rise and play the harlot with the gods of the foreigners of the land. Because of this future idolatry in Israel, God instructed Moses to compose a sort of a national anthem for ancient Israel. Yet this was a strange national anthem because the purpose of this anthem was to testify against them as a witness. God knew that words are more memorable when set to music, so he told Moses to compose the sermon in a song found in the following chapter. Be strong and of good courage. It is remarkable how often this exhortation is directed towards Joshua. He hears it 7 different times. This exposes Joshua's weakness. There was a need for such a command because even a great leader like Joshua needed such encouragement. Most of us, God forgive us, are too big for God to use. We are too full of our own schemes and our own way of doing things. Joshua needed to take strength and courage in the Lord and was small enough to be big in God. When Moses had completed writing the words of this law, Moses finished the first 5 books of the Bible and gave this to Israel and to all creation as the inspired words of God. Some raise objections at this point, wondering who wrote the last 3 chapters of Deuteronomy, because the text says that Moses finished here. No doubt Joshua had the remainder of Moses' words and deeds recorded and added to the end of his magnificent work. Then Moses spoke in the hearing of all the assembly of Israel the words of the song until they were ended. In fact, the song of chapter 32 is strongly reminiscent in its structure and content of a well-known secular political form, namely the formulation of a complaint against a rebel vassal by his overlord, with the threat of punishment. It is not impossible that some, at least in Israel, would have understood such a pattern, and Moses would certainly have met it in the Pharaoh's court. Interesting. Give ear, O heavens, and hear, O earth. Moses began by asking for attention, not only from Israel, but from all creation. I proclaim the name of the Lord, ascribe greatness to our God. He then gave praise to God, both for who God is, he is the rock, righteous and upright, for what God does, his work is perfect, for all his ways are just. They have corrupted themselves. Is he not your father who brought you? Has he not made you and established you? Their sin is even more foolish and unwise in light of what God has done for them. It is foolish and unwise to rebel against the God who has done so much for them. Remember the days of old. Considering that this song was meant to be a witness against a rebellious Israel, Moses reminded Israel of all God's goodness to them. This was to both bring a greater conviction of sin and to remind them of God's love and grace they could return to. And in the previous chapters, we read about Moses admonishing the people to teach their children all the things that the Lord has done for them so that they might serve God. So it's good for us to remember how God has worked throughout history. Jeshurun. This is a title for Israel, which literally means the upright one. They sacrificed to demons. In forsaking God, Israel turned to the pagan idols of the nations around them and actually worshipped demons. There was a dark spiritual reality behind the idols of the nations, and Israel embraced the dark spiritual reality. I will hide my face from them. When God's people forsake him, he withdraws the intimacy of his presence. At first, this is sometimes seen as a relief, because the conviction of sin is not so great, but then the darkness and desperation set in. The consequences of your sin take over. I will heap disasters upon them. When the hiding of his face does not draw God's people into repentance, God then sends his hand of correction and allows calamity to bring the attention of his people back to him. Oh man, Matthew Henry has a lot here. Like at least one point here concerning the make you angry with a nation. Man, what verse was that? 32:21. He had done everything to make them easy and to please them, but now he would do that against them, which should be most vexatious to them. The punishment here answers the sin. They had provoked God with despicable deities which were not gods at all, but vanities, creatures of their own imagination, that could not pretend either to merit or to repay the respect of their worshippers. The more vain and vile the gods were after which they went a-warring, the greater was the offense to the great and good God whom they set them up in competition with and contradiction to. This put two great evils into their idolatry. God would therefore plague them with despicable enemies that were worthless, weak, and inconsiderable, and not deserving the name of a people, which was a great mortification to them, and aggravated the oppressions they groaned under. The more base the people were that tyrannized over them, the more barbarous they would be, none so insolent as a beggar on horseback. Besides that, it would be infamous to Israel, who had so often triumphed over great and mighty nations, to be themselves trampled upon by the weak and foolish, and to come under the curse of Canaan, who was to be a servant of servants. But God can make the weakest instrument a scourge to the strongest sinner, and those that by sin insult their mighty Creator are justly insulted by the meanest of their fellow creatures. This was remarkably fulfilled in the days of the judges, when they were sometimes oppressed by the very Canaanites themselves, whom they had subdued. But the apostles applies it to the conversion of the Gentiles, who had been a people not in covenant with God, and foolish in divine things, yet were brought into the church, sorely to the grief of the Jews, who upon all occasions showed a great indignation at it, which was both their sin and their punishment, as envy always is. Interesting. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you have a great day. Bye.